نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So in this session, inshallah ta'ala, in covering the book Arba'in Nawawi, as referred to as, that we have ended Hadith الثاني والثلاثون, and today inshallah ta'ala we'll be discussing Hadith الثالثة والثلاثون. So this will be a new Hadith in this series. So as the normal routine that or method that the Hadith will be read, and then we go into a discussing of the Hadith with some detail بإذن ta'ala. تفضل.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Hadith number 33. The burden of proof is incumbent is upon the claimant, and the oath is incumbent upon the one who denies. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قال: لو يعطى الناس بدعواهم لأدعى رجال أموال قوم ودماءهم، ولكن البينة على المدعي واليمين على من أنكر. حديث حسن رواه البيهقي وغيره هكذا وبعده في الصحيحين. On the authority of Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنهما, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if people were given what they claimed, men would claim the wealth and blood of the people, but the burden of proof is upon the claimant, and the oath is incumbent upon the one who denies. Hadith Hasan, related by Al-Bayhaqi and others in this form. Some of it is in the Sahihain, i.e. Al-Bukhari and Muslim.
Now, so that's the hadith that is mentioned here as being the hadith of the 33rd hadith in this particular collection of An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. So as the hadith is mentioned, that so the next first thing that as for the Rawi of the hadith was Ibn Abbas, that we have mentioned or made a tarjuma of Ibn Abbas in previous lessons. So we have discussed regarding Ibn Abbas, the Sahabi who is a narrator of the hadith. Then as for the next matter regarding Takhrij of the hadith, the author mentioned Hadithun Hasanun Rawahu Al-Bayhaqi wa ghayruhu wa ba'duhu fi sahihain. And in some other print it mentioned Hadithun Hasan Rawahu Bayhaqi wa ghayruhu hakadha wa ba'duhu fi as-sahihain. So regarding concern this hadith, he mentioned the first, as for this hadith that is in front of us, the hadith of Ibn Abbas, that as for the hadith, it can be found in Al-Bayhaqi, and he mentioned wa ghayruhu and others, and also that the hadith is said to be, the grade of the hadith is Hasan. So in discussing this matter regarding the hadith, that as we will mention at times, that Busiri rahimahullah ta'ala, that I've done some small work on this book, Arba'in Nawawi, that when he mentions this particular hadith, that he states Hadithun Hasan, that with a hadith in the Al-Bayhaqi. So Al-Bayhaqi meaning Al-Sunan Al-Kubra. So Bayhaqi rahimahullah ta'ala, that have many books in hadith. So of his book is Al-Sunan Al-Kubra. So this hadith is in Sunan Al-Kubra. Then he added also regarding concerning this hadith, Al-Busiri qal wa ashab Al-Sunan Al-Arba. So also as Busiri, he mentioned that this hadith also, it is found amongst ashab Al-Sunan Al-Arba. So ashab Sunan Al-Arba, that they are Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi wa Ibn Majah wa Nasa'i. Sunan Al-Arba. So those are the, so according to Busiri, that this hadith is also found in those books of the Sunan, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. So of the things they mentioned, Hadithun Hasan, but also regarding this particular hadith, that as for this particular hadith, as he mentioned, that this particular had different wording. It has different wording of this particular hadith, that you find that Ibn Rajab in his explanation kind of somewhat went through the different riwayat and the different wording of hadith. So you find that Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala in his sharh of Al-Arba'in, Al-Jami' Al-Ulum wal-Hikam, that he went through mentioning the different wording of this hadith. So you find the wording that are said to be in the asl of hadith, that is wording can be found in Bukhari and Muslim, and the wording in Bukhari and Muslim, also the hadith of Ibn Abbas, أن النبي عليه السلام قال لولا يعطي الناس بدعواهم عدها الناس دماء رجال وأموالهم ولكن اليمين على مدعي علي. That's the narration in Bukhari and Muslim. So very somewhat similar. That so he mentioned the hadith here that the asl of hadith goes back to Bukhari and Muslim. But as for the narration in front of it, it goes back to Al-Bayhaqi. It mentioned goes back to Al-Bayhaqi. And others who have narrated this particular hadith. He mentioned, so the hadith as stated, the hadith in the Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. Also this hadith can be found, this narration, in the Ibn Hibban wal Bayhaqi. So those are the ones that hadith can be found in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Ibn Hibban wal Bayhaqi. We said no, slight difference in wording, but with the same general meaning. The hadith can be found in those different sources. Dawood. So as for the hadith here that is mentioned, that it states that hadithun hasan, and that's the grading of An-Nawawi. So the grading of An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, that the hadith it is hasan. So he mentioned that hadith is hasan by way of the grading of the hadith. So he said the asl of the hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim and Kutub as-Sunan. But also this particular narration, it is said to be graded as hadith al-hasan. As for the ulama regarding this hadith, that you find that of the ulama who own this hadith or grade this hadith as hasan, Nawawi, as in this case, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, so Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, also own this hadith to be hasan, Al-Aini al-Hanafi, so Badruddin al-Aini, one of the ulama of the Ahnaf, and also by explanation of Sahih Bukhari. Also, so those are the ones who own the hadith to be hasan. And you find also of the ulama, you find that Ibn Malakhin, Shawkani, and of contemporaries, Albani, who all the hadith to be sahih. So of those who authenticate the hadith as the hadith is sahih, so those who the hadith is hasan, and those who all the hadith to be and those who all the hadith to be sahih. So those who the hadith is sahih, Ibn Malakhin, Al-Shafi, Al-Shawkani, and also Albani, alayhim rahmatullahi ta'ala jami'an. And you find Ahmad al-Hanbal and also Abu Ubaid قال مما يدل على أنه صحيح عندهم, that indicate the hadith with them it is authentic. That Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Abu Ubaid that mention hadith with them, it is somewhat the hadith meaning it is valid, it is authentic. So that's the aqwal of the ulama regarding this particular hadith. When he mentioned hadith, and we have mentioned that they have stated this a few times, hadithun hasan. So the hadith is hasan. So it's okay. So the hadith being said to be hadithul hasan. And we discussed concerning the hadithul hasan. So the ulama have mentioned regarding concerning how we defined, so we have used this term a few times. We said the word hadithul sahih. We use the term hadith hasan, hadithul daif. But what does those terminology actually means? So what is said to be hadith sahih? When we say hadith is sahih, what does that actually means? When we say hadith is hasan, what does it actually means? And also hadith da'if, what does that actually means? So find that these terminology, that ulama of hadith have given them certain type of definition. They have given a certain definition. So you find that hadith sahih and the highest ranking, then we have hadith hasan, the second ranking, then we have hadith da'if, then fall into its category. So Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala, so discussing hadith hasan, he mentioned, obviously he mentioned, قال Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala in his Muqtasar of the book of Ibn Salah, he mentioned huwa fil ihtijaj bihi kasahi. We'll discuss that matter, but he mentioned that as for Indal Jumhur, that regarding hadith that is said to be graded as hasan, then it is of it stands on the same level, or it stands on the same level of that, or stand side by side with hadith sahih regarding ihtijaj. So ihtijaj, that it can be used as a proof. So hadith is said to be hasan, graded hasan, then it can be used as a proof, just as that of sahih. That so as for the definition, And you find that at one point in the scholars of early times, the classical scholars of hadith, that at times that they will not distinguish between hadith al-sahih and hadith al-hasan. They see both as in the same category.
Okay.
So they might refer to hadith as being sahih, but they actually mean hadith is hasan, as we will grade it later on. But for them, they see hadith as being acceptable, maqbool. It consists of two types, sahih and hasan, but both will be labeled as sahih. Sahih and hasan will be labeled as the same. So you find that some of the books of the ulama, you might find that Ibn Khuzaymah, also Ibn Hibban and the likes, where some of the ulama do not make a distinction between saying a hadith is sahih and saying a hadith it is hasan. Both of them fall in the same category. But then later on it becomes where the ulama classify a hadith and categorize hadith into three main distinguishing categories: sahih, hasan, and da'if. As for this matter, regarding concerning that, what is said to be hadith hasan, what is defined as hadith al-hasan, that I mentioned that Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentioned, وَهَذَا نَوْ لَمَّا كَانَ وَسَطًا بَيْنَ الصَّحِيحِ وَالضَّعِيفِ, that this category of hadith that is in between hadith sahih and hadith da'if, it's in between. He mentioned في نظر الناظر, based upon the person who looked at the hadith, he mentioned عُصُر تعبير أنه وضبطه على كثير من آل هذه صناعة. So he mentioned that with hadith hasan being like a middle in between sahih and da'if, that you still find that many of the ulama of hadith find it difficult to give it a definition, to define it, a specific definition. So they still find difficulty in defining what is said to be hadith al-hasan. Now, even though many have put forward a definition of hadith al-hasan, some may even critique some of those definitions that are given, but many of the ulama, they find it somewhat to define hadith hasan as somewhat a discussion between the ulama. Then you find that the more established, renown in our time of what is defined as hadith al-hasan is the definition given by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, alayhi rahmatullah ta'ala, that I've given a definition that it now becomes the standard that is followed. Now it becomes the standard that is followed. Where it could be defined, we mentioned ma ittasal sanadu, what the isnad is continuous, binaqlin ad, transmitted by a reliable, reputable narrator, khaffa dabtu, but his dabt is less, of a lesser level in his dabt. غير مؤل ولا شاذ. So that's the definition he gives. So the hadith he mentioned that hadith hasan, it has 5, or some of the ulama mentioned that with, again, ma ittasal sanaduhu, was of a continuous chain, binaqlin adlin, with narration transmitted by a trustworthy narrator, khaffa dabtu, but the dabt, meaning the hifz, the memory of the narrator, is of a lesser degree than that of a lesser degree compared to one who is sahih. Nam, so I mentioned khaffa dabtuhu ghayr mu'al wala shadh, and it is not one which is contradicting nor one that have hidden defects. That's so with hadith hasan, that you find that there's many similarities in that definition of that of hadith sahih, except for one area, in one matter. So regarding hadith hasan and hadith as-sahih, that both share in similar, regarding that both requires that a hadith have to be muttasil, it have a continuous chain, that is ittisal as-sanad.
That was the definition, explanation by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. This one.
Yeah, that's the definition. That's one. So that the one that become used by Ibn Hajar and now become the established one. Nam. So you have the Khattabi, At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Jawzi, and many others who have tried to define hadith hasan, but as I said, they find that somewhat those definitions, they still kind of somewhat have some area of contention in those definitions. That Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, that now try to give like a standard definition, and that definition is the one that is said the one that is used mainly today. Now, even as also that that become now the established or the more established definition. So it is so with this definition is that it shares similarities with Hadith Sahih, where one that ittisal al-sanad, both Hadith Hasan and Hadith as-Sahih share this condition of authenticity of their definition, ittisal al-sanad. Second, the naql ad, that the narrators are adalatul rawat, that the narrators have to be credible, outstanding individuals. They have to be upright, outstanding individuals. And that's all the narrators in the hadith. That's applied to all the narrators in the hadith. They have to be those who are said to have adala. The third condition that is mentioned, that with hadith Hasan, adopt. So adopt is a criteria for both Sahih and Hasan, but the degree of hadith Sahih is higher than that of hadith Hasan. So Hasan, so Ibn Hajar also rahimahullah ta'ala, when he tried to make a distinction between both, so that somewhat he mentioned dabt for both, but he said that with hadith Sahih, tam ad-dabt. He used the word tam ad-dabt. With me? So tamad means that he has more of a very more precise, accurate, higher standard in his memory compared to the one who's Hasan khaffa dabt. He has a lesser degree in his dabt. So the issue, so that's concerned the difference between both. So the difference between both regarding Sahih and Hasan, it lies in the area of ad-dabt. The one who's Sahih is of tam ad-dabt, of a higher degree, and the one of tam hadith al-Hasan of a lesser degree to him, to the ones who are said to be Sahih. Clear? Then they mention of the other condition that remains, they mention غير mu'all, that hadith also.
Ibn Hajar, his in saying definition of Hasan, you just change khaf to tam.
Hey, we got that instead. When he meant, so not per se change, but he said for dabt is required for both hadith Sahih and Hasan.
No.
But for Sahih, he would use the ibara, he used the word tam ad-dabt to make a distinction, and khaf ad-dabt to make a distinction between both. Nam. So we're just saying dabt. Nam for Sahih tam ad-dabt, Hasan khaf ad-dabt. To make a distinction between both. So it said, as for the other two remaining criteria, Adam al-shudhuz wa Adam al-illa, also that applies to hadith Hasan, just as they apply to hadith Sahih. So it said hadith Sahih have 5 conditions, hadith Hasan lidhatihi as 5 conditions, except with hadith Sahih that a slight difference in ad-dabt, the area of the person, the narrator, level of retaining the hadith. And they mention khaf ad-dabt in regards to, for example, in that hadith they have the tabaqat, different levels of hadith. With me? So you have the Prophet alayhi salam, then you have the Sahaba, that's one tabaqa, then you have the Tabi'een, and different, you understand, then you have those who after them. So for example, you have 5 levels. With me? 5 levels of the hadith tabaqat, that if one of the narrator, so look at the weakest link, if you want to use that term, the weakest link in the isnad will decide the ruling on the hadith. So if they said the weakest link, meaning the weakest of the person, the hadith. So the person, the hadith, you have X amount, for example, you have X amount of people in the hadith. That if one of those narrators is said to be of some slight weakness, or said that is khaf ad-dabt, then the hadith will be graded according to him, which will be Hasan. Because they look at them, we said the weakest link, the weakest person. So the hadith will go with the person who said to be the weakest person in the isnad. Clear, ikhwan? Nam. So that's considered. As for Sahih, if everyone is considered to be thiqat, then some of the thiqat may be thiqatun hafiz, thiqatun dabt, thiqatun thiqa. But one said thiqa, but it's still the hadith to Sahih. But it will be because Sahih have different levels. Hadith to Sahih have different grades, levels. But it will still say Sahih because they said look at the weakest link, which is everyone is thiqatun hafiz, but you have one person, he is just thiqa. Then the hadith now becomes sahih, but it will go back to the weakest person in the isnad. Regarding hadith as sahih, so hadith hasan, so it doesn't require that everyone is khafadabt. It's just one person, then that will regulate the hadith to hasan, regulate the hadith to hasan. So that's concerning hadith al-hasan, that as we mentioned, that the more established or renowned, more established now in our time definition of hadith hasan is that given by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. So you have those conditions that we have mentioned, the 5 conditions regarding hadith hasan li dhati. With hadith hasan li ghayri, it has 6 conditions. But next, as we said, that hadith that is said to be hasan, it can be used, general concern as hujjah, it can be used as an evidence regarding any matters of the deen, whether matters of aqidah, matters regarding halal or haram, and any matters of the deen. So hadith hasan that have been graded hasan by the ulama of hadith, then that hadith can be used as an evidence in any matters of the deen, whether matters of aqidah or matters of fiqh or halal and haram, matters regarding al-akhlaq wal-suluk and the likes, from the fact that the hadith is said to be or graded hasan as a general principle, then it can be used as an evidence, just as that of sahih. Nam, hadith hasan, you have others of different definition. They said you have others of, one of the ulama that is called Taqiyuddin Shamunni. Taqiyuddin Shamunni. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, when he wrote his book, Nuqbatul Fikr, then someone came and made it into a poem, and that is Shamunni. And this was done while Ibn Hajar was still alive. And also Shamunni went on to explain it. So they make his book in Mustalah into a poem, and then they went on to explain it before Ibn Hajar. So Ibn Hajar wrote a book. Someone during his time did some work on it, and the author is still alive, and this person both still alive. So this person came, saw this work of Ibn Hajar, then he went and made it into a poetic form to make it easier to memorize. Then next went on to explain it while Ibn Hajar is still alive. Then Ibn Hajar rahimahullah went on to explain it because he felt that he could better explain his work than others. But overall, so that of that time you find that an alim that see a work of another alim of his contemporary, you understand, went on to explain that book before the author itself explained the book. So Shamunni rahimahullah ta'ala, that in his explanation can somewhat give his definition, that some even mentioned that his definition may be more precise than that of Ibn Hajar. So the definition, we're not going to go to a long, but that he mentioned that hadith hasan in the Shamunni, he mentioned khabar muttasil. It means khabar hadith muttasil, that have a continuous chain, qalla dabt, that a less degree in dabt, similar to Ibn Hajar, rawihi ad, and its narrator is said to be one who is ad, wartafa and hal, and also is raised above hal, man yu'ad ma yanfarid bihi munkar, which is he hasn't reached a level where if he's on his own, his hadith is not said to be munkar, rejected. وَلَيْسَ بِشَادْ وَلَا مُعَلْ, and it is not said to be hadith which is said to be shadh, that contradicting, or odd, or mu'al, that also it is one that has hidden defects. So they mentioned that definition is much more, some see it as more precise than that of Ibn Hajar. But said that's the next discussion. That's another discussion. But said that the standard definition that is used today is that of Hadith Hasan ibn Hajar. That's the standard that is used today by most. With Hadith Hasan, you mentioned Hadith al-Hasan. That Hadith Hasan was said, as mentioned by Ibn Kathir, is between what?
Between
Sahih and Da'if. So it's in between. Naam. So you might some level of Hadith Hasan, which is said Hasan li ghayri. The asl of it that Hadith is have some weakness. It has some slight weakness. Naam. So it needs supporting Hadith to elevate it to Hadith Hasan li ghayri. Naam. So that's what the other 6 conditions for Hadith Hasan li ghayri. But overall, that this level or this type of grading of Hadith is the area you find that the ulama of Hadith, they usually differ on this matter. You might have the ulama of Hadith around this area, you find that more area of discussion in this here in the area of grading Hadith of Hasan. Naam. So you find more discussion. You find that to the extent we find that of the ulama who hold regarding even of contemporaries that their grading of Hadith bin Hasan at times to be just be double checked, because the ulama are concerned in this area at times that they may be more complacent. Complacent. So at times they be more complacent regarding passing judgment and Hadith al-Hasan. So, and that they said that applies to ulama of even some of the contemporaries, because somewhat they're more complacent regarding passing judgment and Hadith as saying it is Hasan. So that's the thing that you'll find. So likes of Nawawi and of that category, that when they pass judgment and Hadith saying it is Hasan, that at times does that they said at times does double check.
So you're saying it only happens in this middle part?
In that middle area.
So it never happens on the opposite?
It happens. It occurs more frequent in the area of Hasan. It does occur in concern as in all the area regarding Hadith being Da'if. At times you might find a slight difference. Yes, and Hadith more and Hadith Sahih, but the area find that more of a difference, contention would be in the area of Hasan. Nam. So even find that even contemporary times in our time, that you have like madaris regarding how they approach grading and study of Hadith. You have no madaris, different madaris. Nam. That are out there. Anyway, the next discussion. That's another discussion. So said because of these different madaris, though different said even that at times that some may be accused of being more mutasahil, that they are more complacent and more in their judgment on Hadith regarding Hadith being Hasan or Sahih. Now, Da'if is not more the area of that area, not less of a contention, but the area regarding Hadith being Hasan and at times Hadith Sahih. That in these madaris, that they might say one might take the view that the others from this approach that they are more complacent in their judgment on Hadith. So at times one need to double check. One need to double check. And that their judgment Hadith regarding that so of that occurs and out there. But that's within ilmul Hadith. So that's concerned that matter in brief regarding that particular discussion. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala that all the Hadith to be what? Hasan. All the Hadith to be Hasan. Then we have discussed concerning the matter regarding at-takhrij. So the Hadith have different wordings. So you find that this particular Hadith, they find that different narration. Also they mentioned that Ibn that we said that not also that all the Hadith of Hasan, that Ibn Salah. So also Ibn Salah of those who grade this Hadith as Hasan. There's even a time, even Salah, that even of times, at certain time, where some of the ulama are all concerned that, judgment on Hadith, that bab is closed. So passing judgment on Hadith, then some of the ulama at some was that even that bab was closed. So you find out at a certain time in Islamic history, 6th century is 5th, 6th century, around that time, where some of the ulama take the approach regarding that matters relating to ijtihad. So if an alim to come out with something, a new judge, bab of ijtihad, it's bab of ijtihad and matters of fiqh is closed, meaning that an alim, regardless of how the level of his academic level or proficiency in a particular side, specialization in a particular side, he is not able to come up with new judgment. He just follow whatever has been established, because the bab of ijtihad, it is closed. So no one is allowed to go outside that which is already established. And that's in the 6th century. So you find that the defense, so even at that time you find the concerning the influences that regarding even the madha'ib, al-arba, become even more rigid regarding whatever has been established. You just go along with it and do not go against it. And no ijtihad. Don't come up with anything that is outside what is already established. You just accept and follow. So you find some ulama that they say in fiqh, it was more renowned in the area of fiqh. And then, so it says, so with those people, you must and have to follow a madhab. And whatever is in there, you accept it as it is. Don't challenge, accept. So even if an alim of a certain level, he's still restricted to only just accept what has already been accepted and established. That also have some kind of extend it to ilm al-hadith. Have some also kind of somewhat try to extend that iglaq bab al-ijtihad, closing the door of ijtihad, even matters regarding judgment on hadith. So even Salah kind of somewhat mention of those matters, but Allah mentioned that contrary, that's not the case. That the bab of ijtihad, meaning concerning passing judgment on hadith, that's not something which is closed. It has no timeline regarding closing that bab. So you find out that, so so that's concerning that particular discussion, and why a certain thing kind of somewhat was left. So that this particular hadith also, you have different alfaz of the hadith, but also with this hadith also you find that different shawahid. So they mention a shawahid, meaning concerning that what is used, no shawahid, that the hadith, this hadith narrated up by other companions. So other companions other than Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, narrating this hadith. So amongst those who have narrated this hadith, you have Ashad ibn Qais, and narrate this particular hadith. Then I mentioned in his hadith, and some mentioned that كان بيني وبين رجل كان بيني وبين رجل أرض باليمن. That can some of them mention فقاسمته إلى النبي عليه السلام, that that me and this person has some land in Yemen. And me and like a dispute, so we took it to the Prophet ﷺ. And this hadith somewhat was mentioned. This hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, هل لك بينة? So mentioned, do you have any evidence regarding your claim? قلت قال قلت لا. The person says no. فقال عليه السلام فيمينه. Then give your yamin, as we'll discuss concerning a person have to take an oath. So this hadith have different wording, but this hadith was that the hadith of Ashad ibn Qais regarding that there's a dispute between himself and a person, and the matter was went back to the Prophet ﷺ, and then this particular hadith was somewhat mentioned or of this meaning. Then also of that hadith that they mentioned hadith of Wahil ibn Hajar. So Wahil ibn Hajar, that also have this hadith, Wahil ibn Hajar also have this mentioned hadith that of similar meaning. So I mentioned these are the shawahid of this hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ asking people to bring their evidence or taking an oath regarding certain dispute between individuals. So you find that because this hadith of this nature, we find that the Prophet ﷺ asking for al-bayyina or yamin in cases of difference, dispute between individuals. Then they mentioned that, as we said, Ahmad ibn Hanbal wa Abu Ubaid, can I mention that al-bayyina ala al-muddahi wal yamin ala man ankar. I mentioned that with all these wording, that it showed the hadith with them is authentic. And evidence. Is that becomes an evidence. And also you have certain narration that goes back to even from the Sahaba regarding that them applying this regarding an Omar. And it is ru'ya that is narrated upon him or mentioned upon him regarding the case of Abu Musa and al-bayna ala muddahi wal yamina ala man ankar. So kind of somewhat mention that it's for the person who made the claim to bring the evidence and the person who's brought against for them to take their yamin, to take the oath. Then also you find that in applying this hadith, they mentioned that qada bidhalik Zayd bin Thabit and also the companions who kind of somewhat they applied this particular hadith. And also Qatada and others. And Ibn Mundhir rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned ajmahu ala anna al-bayna ala mudda'i. That Ibn Mundhir, he mentioned that he has a book called Al-Ijma. So Ibn Mundhir has a book that discusses matters regarding Al-Ijma. Then he mentioned ajmahu ala al-bayna ala mudda'i. That it's agreed upon between the ulama that the person who makes a claim is for him to bring his evidence, his proof, wal yamin ala mudda alayh, and the one who is brought against for them to take an oath. So that's concerning the matter which is discussed, or this particular hadith. The next other matter that would be discussed, hamiyat al-hadith wa manzilatuhu. Concerning that, the hamiyat al-hadith, the importance and the status of this hadith. The importance and the status of this particular hadith. As we have stated that Ibn Mundhir, in his statement, said it's now, ajmahu, that Ibn Mundhir, to show the status of this hadith, that the ulama kind of somewhat they've agreed regarding what is mentioned in this hadith regarding the person who makes a claim for them to bring the evidence and the proof, and also the person who is being, the claim is being against, is for them to take an oath, for them to take an oath. And Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned regarding this particular hadith, so we found that he mentioned hadith qa'idatun kabiratun min qawaid ahkam ash-shar. That Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned that hadithun qa'ida, that this hadith is a great principles amongst the principles of the ahkam ash-shar. So consider this hadith is a principle amongst the ahkam ash-shar'iyyah. So the ulama mentioned is al-bayyina ala mudda'i. So when you have like dispute occur, they'll always use this term. Al-bayyina ala mudda'i wal yamin ala mudda'i wal yamin ala mudda'i alayh. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he mentioned regarding this particular hadith in his explanation. So Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, Abdullah explained Arba'in, he mentioned هذا حديث أصل, that this hadith is an asl, a fundamental min usul al-ahkam, from the foundation of the ahkam of Islam, وأعظم مرجعا or مرجع عند تنازع والخصام, and that also becomes a very great reference point in areas where there is dispute and disagreements, where those who are making a claim, what's your evidence? Because you're claiming something, and the person that is you're against, now the claim is being against, is for them to take an oath, for them to take an oath and rejecting what you're claiming against them.
So this is all clear. So the claimant has to bring evidence before he can make a claim. So basically, you can't bring something without evidence.
No, that
Because how can you expect the person to make oath and that person hasn't brought any evidence? Basically, so that has to be, at the end of Tati, for example, if the person has no evidence, it's not combined. He makes a claim.
That's concerned the application. So we come to the application of this. You understand? So as for the application, so the general thing is regarding to just understand the hadith that as a general rule, now if a person make a claim, one states something is his against another person, now then you have to bring the proof. So if you have the proof, then bring it. Now, so if you have, so I want to claim that a property is mine, and I have the evidence. I also said, but someone living there and claiming to be theirs. Now, but I'm saying no, that's my property. Now, then it's for me then to bring the paper that said this is mine or this car is my car. So if I have the evidence, I bring it. Now, then, but if I have no evidence, now then the person for him then to reject. Him said no, that's not the case. So it all depends on the situation. Now, when they present, so the person, but I've said in general, anyone can make a claim. Anyone can make a claim. But it's enough for the judge then to make a decision, then he has to follow certain procedures. Now, so a person can make a claim for anything, but is that claim one which is a valid claim or not? It goes through procedure. See who's actually in the right and who is not. Now, which is who can you prove that this thing is yours or not? So for example, a person, okay, as an example, that a person claims that, you know, this person, he owes me £1,000. Then, but he said not. Then, but when he came, said, no, I have a written document when we both wrote, signed to it, and I have evidence. But the person said no. You meet the person says, no, you owe me my 1,000. It's now 6 months past. I want my 1,000. The person said no. So I said, okay, let me go and sit with an arbitrator. And he said, okay, you bring your letter. But you understand, I forget. I don't remember. And all these things that, you understand, said, okay, this is it, that we made this and you haven't paid me back. So I have evidence that you did took this money from me. So you have bayina, you have your evidence. So it varies. They might find a case, a person,
That's what I'm going to say, but I don't understand why I've been begging her. Why does the person then have to make oath?
If there's no bayina, then he makes the oath.
Okay, if there's no bayina.
And they have no mistake. Yes, so you have one of both.
Okay.
You understand? One of both, you understand? So, because we said, you might even find that, and these cases, we said one of both. We said you have cases where a person, one person is not, we said, a decent person. You understand? So you might have beginner, but he's still denying and he still make his oath. He doesn't really care. La yakhafullah.
That's why I asked.
You understand? So you have a certain person, he will deny, you understand? He will swear on anything. You understand? So, Bob said this become like a tool for the judge to use to come to a decision. So sometimes go back to the individuals involved and what they can produce. And also their level of taqwa.
That's why I asked this. When the hadith was worded, it said, wow. What do you mean? It said basically, al-bayyina ala-madda'i, what do you mean? So I'm thinking, do you have to bring both?
And not necessarily.
And he brings your mean. And he brings what I mean. But you're saying if he didn't have bayyina.
And the person have clear thing, you understand, then it becomes, that will take precedent. The person have clear proof, then khalas, then he can prove his cases. You understand, whatever his claim can be proven, then you go with that because he has something to say that his claim is valid.
So if it's a spoken, just elaborate, if it's a spoken contract, then
in that case, they've got a different approach. You understand? So the mess with something which is said, a gentleman's agreement, as they say. You understand? Which is something spoken. You understand? But you're saying, you have no witness just between you and him. You understand? It's just between you and him. For example, these cases occur that these cases sometimes occur regarding marriages. You understand? Concerning what is the mahar. You understand? So said, write it down. Write it down, because if anything happened tomorrow, then someone's going to forget. You understand? If it's not written. So I said, so the person said, no, that the mahar, I said, I'm going to give you £1,000. But I gave it to you. And she said, no, you didn't give me anything. You understand? So, okay. So the person says, okay, where's your marriage certificate? It have that information, isn't it? He said, we have no certificate. Okay, do you have any paper that was written when you got married? You were given a certificate, but were you given any form of paper that things was written? The date of the marriage, the place of the marriage, who got married, the name of the groom and the bride, the mahar winner. There's a piece of paper with something. We don't have that. So who making a claim? So depending on who making a claim, then someone have to then take an oath. Someone, because there's no clear, nothing you can produce. Then now in that case, someone have to take the oath. Clear?
Someone or both?
One.
One? Okay.
Aye. Sometimes in these cases go back to a personal level of taqwa. That's the thing, sometimes the personal level where both will take oaths and don't really care. You understand? So ordinarily, you understand, one is sufficient, but you might find cases where both are saying out against, still contrary to each other. You understand? Then you have to find qara'in. Then it goes now to find other ways to now come to knowing what's the real situation. And who's actually in the right and who's in the wrong. So you have, in these cases, like anything that goes in front of a court, or arbitrators, depending on, something goes back to the individuals involved. You understand? Their level of credibility as a person, and level of trustworthiness as a person. You understand? A person that, so people, so those things also you have to factor in as the person, the arbitrator. You have to factor in those things as the arbitrator or the judge. So, as for the hadith also, that regarding the status of this hadith and its importance, the weight that it carries, that Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala in his explanation mentioned, had the hadith asl azim, that this hadith also the important principle fil qada, in matters relating to judgment, in Islamic judgment, judicial matters, وقاعدة عظيمة ينتفى بها القاضي, where that a judge, he benefits from this principle. In using of this principle, the judge as it as an important tool for him to use. وينتفى بها المصلح, and also the person who's trying to arbitrate between people. بين اثنين وما إلى ذلك. So a person also use these type of things, this principle, this hadith, as a guide regarding arbitrating between individuals, between those that are disputing. So that hadith also shows the importance regarding making concern when you have dispute between others. One claiming something and the other either denying or saying something otherwise contrary, then this hadith then comes into play. As he mentioned, لو يعطى الناس, that if concern, as I mentioned, concern لو يعطى الناس, regarding concerns now, if one was to give to the people based upon their claims, and the person man يعطى concern the person who, that would be like the qadi or the muslih, so the person who's like arbitrating between those individuals, that people would present their case before that person, that if you were to kind of somewhat take to what everyone claim, then people claim everything from people. Their wealth, you understand? So everything, people claim everything against others. So as you must say about, so mean that the person will follow a line of caution against people making claims. So everyone have claimed that they want, or some people have claimed that they want to make against others regarding concerning al-rajul, rijal amwal, al-qawm, wa dima'uhum, regarding concerning wanting retribution, wanting concerning people's wealth and property. So you find that especially in those areas regarding things relating to property, a lot of claims are made against others. So a person may possess something, so people making claim against person's belongings or a person's wealth. So you find a lot of dispute in those areas. In person's amwal, that so in wealth, also dima of people claiming that people have done them wrong regarding spilling of blood or harming others physically. So you have also in those areas, and you want retribution for that. So also you find in those areas claims that are made. So those matters normally go back to a qadi, or those who can act as an arbitrator. So qadi or arbitrator in these matters to see as to who's deserving what. And of those things that they can use, al-bayyina ala muddai, the one who makes a claim, what's your evidence? What's your evidence? You're the one making a claim, so the first thing, what's your evidence? And in any dispute you have with people, that you find that you're acting as an arbitrator, then you want to know who's making a claim. Can you find one side who are making the claim against the others? So who making the claim? Then you start from that person. What's the sense? And you have different things. So now you say, what's the story? So the claim is only known until the person gives their story. What's the story? What's the situation? What's the area of contention between you and this person? And try to be as specific. Sometimes the person will tell you a long story. You understand? It varies. Sometimes you might listen to the story, but you just want to end, you want to know. So what's the point of dispute? Tell the story, okay, no problem. They want to let it out, as they say. You can listen, just listen. And not seem as if you're, that you're biased towards a side. You listen. Don't smile too much with one side. Just kind of somewhat, it says, be stiff. You understand? So listen what the person have to say. But at the end of it, whatever they have to say, they want to know in summary, what's the area or the points of dispute? What's your, you understand, why we're here? Why we're here? Then at the end, you listen to the person's story, okay? What's your story? The person then gives the other side gives their start a story, okay? If everything seems to be contradiction or areas, then say, okay, then you start then to work on those areas of contention. The area of contention, and then of those things, what's your evidence? What's evidence for what you're saying or claiming? So with that hadith, so with the hadith, as I said, with this hadith is going to somewhat to give us a system regarding concerning also a person who is a qadi or muslih, regarding if cases of dispute between the people, how to go about kind of somewhat trying to, as I say, get to the bottom of things and knowing whoever is making the claim, what's your evidence that you can bring forward regarding your claim, and for the other side also they have to take some actions, which is al-yamin. So to how to say, or they have evidence to say otherwise. So, and they mention concerning that al-bayyina, I will discuss concerning that al-bayyina at times could be a piece of paper, at times it could be you having witness. So you can bring witness. So al-bayyina doesn't necessarily mean the person have come with one, you have to have something written. So it could mean the person also have other people who are there as witnesses. So that can be used as a bayyina, as mentioned, qara'in. So these different things that can be used as to support what the person is, the person's claim, then those things would be looked at. And also from the hadith in general, the hadith show that that at times you might have dispute. At times between people, there may be dispute. And that dispute says so, dispute will occur and have occurred and will continue to occur. But it's just finding that with Islam, that yes, there will be dispute, but there's also a mechanism to resolve this. So having problem, not a problem to me. So having a problem that does exist. The problem is if you don't have a mechanism to resolve those problems. But with Islam, alhamdulillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we have a mechanism, a system regarding how to resolve dispute and problem. So that go back to the judicial system and Islamic law and Sharia regarding how to resolve these type of things. But problem occur, that does occur. You understand? Is how we have a system, the main thing, we have a system in place in resolving those things. Just as I said, and those disputes, we said it could be in matters regarding business, business between individuals regarding amwal, or concerning matters regarding matter regarding az-zawaj, regarding matter regarding family matters, or any other matter. So I said that if there's a dispute that is in place, a system in place regarding matters regarding these things, we said that things of the dunya, dispute regarding things of dunya matters, amwal and the West. How about dispute regarding matters? Are there a system regarding dispute regarding matters regarding we said diniya? Is this sunnah? Is this bid'ah? Is there a mechanism to resolve those things? The dispute that we may have regarding matters regarding diniya. Yes. But are we willing to follow? So you might find dispute. So which month we're in? Arab, Islamic. Rabi al-Awwal. So Rabi al-Awwal they have what? What's the big event?
Mawlid.
A Mawlid. So they become a big event. And every year you have this dispute. So around that time, they said the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, the Prophet ﷺ supposed to have born. Naam, his birth. Naam, so every year around that time you have that discussion. Those who for or against. And every year it occurs. And there's no way to resolve it. If we have this discussion every year and still we cannot come to a system, a way, a method of how to resolve it, what is it? What's it? Is that a word? To finally resolve this matter.
The conclusion.
Or come to the bottom of it.
And so I said, can we? Because we have it every year it occurs. You understand? So why is it we're unable yet to come to a final conclusion, decision regarding of those? I said those who are pro Mawlid and those who are what we said the word other not pro would be against it. Anti Mawlid. Aywa, Jazakallah khair. So those who are pro and those who are anti. How can we resolve this matter? We must have a system, because the ones who are pro, they're saying is a part of the part of the deen, the part of the sunnah, or part of the deen, or whatever. But it says a part of Islam. And those who are said the anti, saying no, that we have nothing to say it is a part of Islam. With the Prophet of Islam, did he do it? Or did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention about the Prophet of Islam birth in the Quran? Anything mentioned about this? Is there? That he born on a particular day and for it to be celebrated? No. In the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, did he celebrate his own birth, day of birth, birthday as they say? Did he? Even the ulama of hadith, or the ulama regarding concerning even the day that he's supposed to, that they claim that he was born on, even a matter of dispute. And there's nothing clearly authentic to say that he was born on Rabi al-Awwal, the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal. There's a dispute between the ulama. So that day that is mentioned, that even self is on the discussion. And those who claim it, bring evidence that it is authentic. Whether Akthar ulama say it is more likely or not, can you prove it? Definitely. Nam, so you have that, a dispute. Then the Prophet ﷺ didn't celebrate it. Alayhi salam. The Sahaba, okay, the Sahaba, did they celebrate anything? So I said, but so you come with everything, but instead said the mindset of the Muslim that we are fixed into a particular thing. We can't see outside a particular box. So the one who is pro, they see it as, they all said yes, the Prophet ﷺ didn't do it, the Sahaba didn't do it, the Tabi'een didn't do it, Qurun Mufaddala didn't do it, but because of Hubb Rasulullah, we have to do it.
Yeah. Is that qiyas? Is that the qiyas
Qiyas is shaitan.
Nam
said we love the Prophet ﷺ. No one is not love the Prophet ﷺ. But to love the Prophet, we have to celebrate Mawlid in the form of Mawlid. You understand? The Prophet ﷺ says that if there's something that the Prophet wanted, you'd have indicated this in some way or another. But then they're established. So I said these things that they use, he said these things that they try to pull from here and there, it's just, you understand, love the Prophet. I said, no one denying, it's not about love. You bring your next message, that's not the message, mahal al-niza. That's not the point of discussion or where we're disputing about Mahabbat Rasulullah. That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing having Mawlid. That's what we're discussing. So love is not the issue. And if you look in the history, in the history of Islam, who started this? Everything, it has a starting point. Who started it? And sometimes they cannot try to dismiss that part of things. Ask them, who started this practice of Mawlid? It wasn't the Sahaba, wasn't the Tabi'een, wasn't the best that we know from the 3 generations. And from any of them said, not Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Ahmed, or any of the ulama of Islam. None of the great scholars of Islam ever supported for the first 4 centuries, supported Mawlid. Then this event it started around in the 4th century of Islam, where some of the people as a Fatimiyin, which is that these people they were people who were Shia. They started it. So they are the people who are Shia, that they started Mawlid, so that the then Khalifa, of them that he wanted to add his birthday as a celebration. So he kind of somewhat made it a thing where he has his birthday that is celebrated, that of Ali, Fatima, this person, that person, and the Prophet. So about 5 birthdays going. One of them is the Prophet ﷺ. And it started then afterward kind of somewhat died out. Then about in the 6th century kind of somewhat was revived in the 6th century, 7th century. The 6th century it revived again, but this time in Iraq. And then established until today. We find that so become like I've been to a country where they have that country is a non-Muslim country, but the state allow the Muslim population, they allow them 2 days as holidays. 2 days as holidays. So which do you think are those 2 days? Yeah, but you have gone, okay, both Eids. And that's what you'll be thinking, but one of them was concerning Eid al-Fitr, and one of them was one of the Eids, and the other one was Mawlid. You understand? So it said, no, it have reached into, in most countries, except for a few that may not have this as a national holiday. So people use this, and most of the Muslims are doing it, so balash. So everyone should kind of somewhat fall in line. So it's not these differences that we have, you understand, whether in this matter or other matters, why we're unable to resolve them. But we have a system. And of those things, that goes back to itibal hawa, that not able to resolve of these things, go back to people following their desires. What ta'assub are people that they have this fanatic view on a particular thing. They are unchanged. Or so itiqad, or the person of his belief system, his belief in Islam has been corrupted. So these are the things that are somewhat ta'assub to ulama, to particular mashayikh that or follow a particular pathway of at-turuq. So you find those people who fall into these things, become that they cannot let go. You already buy into something, either follow a particular sheikh and that he says go, or you find a particular concept that allows this, so you just go with the flow of things. So you can't let go because you're already attached to certain things. Even the evidence is put in front of you because you've been corrupted by something. You're too overly attached to something that blocks you from, you understand, going back to things regarding the asl of things. So we have those issues. So that inshallah ta'ala, we went off track, but with that inshallah ta'ala we'll end and continue next week with this hadith regarding the fawaid and the benefit that can be taken from this hadith. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذه السبيل والآخر الحمد لله.